The final spiritual godmother I wanted to share with you is Amy Carmichael, who lived from 1879 to 1951. And Carmichael is not African American. She's an Irish missionary who very briefly, after spending a little time in Japan, went to India and spent the rest of her life in India. After arriving there, she never left. But I chose her as a spiritual godmother because I didn't feel all my spiritual godmothers had to be African American, and I really enjoyed her writings. And she has an interesting legacy. When Carmichael went to India, one of the first things that she encountered was a very old historical tradition of young children being sent to live in temples. And they weren't just living in temples, they were what we might call temple prostitutes for the adults who worked or spent a great deal of time in the temples. And she challenged this process because she felt it was wrong. And she encountered a lot of negativity from people who said that you don't have a right to question the culture of India. This is the culture, and it's incorrect and inappropriate for you to say that people cannot do what they've done for hundreds of years. And even though she wanted to be a part of the people of India, she had the moral courage to say, everything you're doing is not right just because you've been doing it for a long time. Now, what happened as a result of her position on this was that she encountered a lot of enemies. And a preferred method or way of assassinating people at that point was to dig a pit along a path that was commonly used and then cover it up. And then someone would simply follow the traditional path and they would fall into the pit, and if they didn't die, they would be seriously injured. And she didn't escape this. The first time someone dug a pit, she did avoid falling into it. And in her memoir, she writes that later on, one of her missionary supporters back in the UK wrote her saying that very day they had a sense of an imminent sense there was some kind of danger facing her. And so they prayed, and so that evening she did not fall into the pit. She took a different path home. But the second time, in 1932, she did fall into the pit. And so for me, Carmichael's life represents knowing God's faithfulness in deep disappointment and deep personal pain. She fell into the pit and she suffered permanent, lifelong disability. She initially was on splints, and the doctors told her, you'll have to stay on the splints for about 8 or 10 weeks. But as time went by, it became clear to everybody that she was not going to recover. And in fact, she never left her bed. And even though she stayed in India until 1951 when she died, and she did continue the mission of her community, they did continue to take in children, boys and girls, who had been targeted or tracked to go work as temple prostitutes, so the community grew to hundreds of children. She never left her bed, and she had a lot of pain, probably because she wasn't in the best place to get the best medical care, but that's where she spent the rest of her life. Now, as a result of that, she wrote a lot of devotionals, hymns, poems that are still in print and that people have still taken a lot of inspiration from. So just in concluding, I'd like to just share this one excerpt from one of her devotionals. Is there something you are facing, whether in your outer circumstances or in your inner character, that seems impossible to command? Something that has baffled you and outwitted you 1,000 times and appears that it will win over you in the end. Something as deaf to your command as the wind in the wild waters. Don't despair. Don't shrug and give up. Our Lord, your Lord and mine, can command even the most difficult, unruly thing that seems as if it will never be commanded. Let his word even be a comfort to you. He who commands even the winds and the waters, and they must obey him. He can say to that, even of yours. Peace, be still. And there will come for you a great calm. Remember, there is nothing you are asked to do in your own strength, not the least thing, not the greatest. And here she has a quotation from Philippians 2:13, which is the Ways translation, which I think is probably one that's not commonly in use anymore, but it's here, so I'll read it for you. God, who is all the while supplying the impulse to obey and to overcome, giving you the power of inner resolve to see it through to victory, is also giving you the strength to perform under pressure and to carry out his good pleasure. Philippians 2:13. All the tremendous forces of nature, weather and politics and human nature too, are at the beck and call of our God. Each has only a faint shadow of the spiritual power that is his, and that he is ready to send forth for us. Isn't that amazing? How utterly foolish it is to plead weakness when we, even you and I, may move into the stream of that power, if only we will. God bless you.